If you've watched our channel for any length of time, you know that we focus more on enthusiast-oriented cars, things like sports cars, trucks that can tow, things that go off-road. And I'm standing next to a 2024 Lincoln Nautilus, which is, in fact, not much of an enthusiast car. Welcome to Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, and I did request this because Powertrain just named it their SUV of the year. It's received a lot of other accolades, and there's a lot to look at, literally, with the 2024 Nautilus, and I think it represents a very interesting sort of shift in what Lincoln is doing, or more a double down on what they're doing more than anything. So I requested one and Lincoln sent one over, so let's talk all about it. So first things first with this Nautilus. This is all new for 2024. This is the second generation of this car, and the Nautilus before was kind of a fine, inoffensive thing based on the Ford Edge. It was a large two-row crossover, and this one is not based on the Ford Edge because the Ford Edge is no longer with us. So this is based on the Ford C2 platform, which means nothing to anyone, but it underpins things like the Ford Bronco Sport, the Ford Maverick, but also Lincoln's smaller crossover, the Corsair. So in this case, they stretch the wheelbase, they stretch the overall length, which is something that happens with all sorts of platforms, no matter who makes them, and they made this. And this is fairly large. It's about the size of a Lexus RX, which is a car I'm gonna keep talking about because I think it's a fair competitor to the Nautilus. Now, powertrain-wise, you've got two options. You've got a 2-liter EcoBoost turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes some amount of horsepower and torque. I don't know, because this one is the hybrid. So this one is the 2-liter EcoBoost 4 paired to a hybrid system. And that gives you a total system output of 310 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. And that is paired with standard all-wheel drive and an eCVT. Now that is not going to be a rubber bandy CVT. It's more like a Prius CVT. It's one of those that uses planetary gears and is generally a pleasant experience. So that is your basic drivetrain. Now this one, this wind is very rude. Now this one has adaptive suspension. That is an option on these Nautili, whatever, this car. Optional adaptive suspension, and this one is a Reserve 3 trim, which is just shy of the fully loaded black label, but in this case it's got the Jet Appearance package, which gives it black accents in places, and these 22-inch wheels. Keep those in mind because I do think they impact my feelings on this car. Now, this is not for driving enthusiasts. Yes, 310 horsepower, yay, but the big deal is more what happens inside. So let's head on in there. All right, so first things first, getting in, you've got your door handles here at the top. It's just a little squeeze trigger to pop these open. The doors are not soft close, but that is okay. Now, looking at the door panels, you've got your speakers for your optional Revel Ultima 20-some speaker sound system. The sound system we'll talk about in a minute. And then these are actually going to be for part of your ambient lighting, which is kind of a nice touch. Now this one is, like I said, fairly fully loaded. So this has the perfect position seats that adjust a billion different ways, and it can take a minute to get them fully adjusted, but some of your adjustments are going to be down here, and then others are going to be in one of the screens. And I say one of the screens because there are indeed many. So let's take a look here. Now, first things first, you'll notice the squircle steering wheel that I have, and Lincoln is doing this because it gets your steering wheel out of the way of the screen. So when you're up here at eye height, you can see all of this. And I say all of this because this is 4 feet of dashboard screen. And then you've got this guy right here. So let's go through what these all are because it is indeed a lot. So this is actually 2 screens. You've got one that goes from the left side over to the center of the dash right here. You can kind of see a little line to the right of the map. And then you've got another one that spans all the way over here toward the A-pillar on the passenger side. So if we look over here, this is going to be kind of your driver assistance, your fuel gauge, your speed, and then you've got your maps. Now, the car uses Android Automotive. They do not use Ford Sync anymore, which is, depending on who you talk to, generally a welcome change. And this is Google Maps built into the car. So more on that in just a second. And then if we look further over, these 3 items here. So in this case, I've got music, I've got trip 1, and I've got the weather. These are configurable. So the left half of the screen cannot be changed, the right half can be. And you do that through the smaller screen. So the top screens are not touch screens. Everything is controlled down here. And all you have to do is hit this guy right here, and that lets you configure the right half. So all you have to do is tap, hold, drag, and here, you can see I'm replacing the weather with my fuel economy and electric driving score. So that is fine. I just don't know how much people need to be seeing the weather or the fuel economy so large on this big screen. But it's a very cool concept. So I appreciate the fact that Lincoln is doing something different. We're seeing more of these full dash width screens, and I think you have to figure out how you're going to use all of the pixels and make it clever. So this is at least a good start. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back to the weather because I find that the least offensive, despite me being able to tell the weather because I'm driving in it. I can see it outside. As far as what else you can do with this center display, if you hit the car icon that looks like a little Nautilus, it's even the right color with the right wheels. I love that. You can go through your drive modes, which there's also a button for down here. You've got your ambient lighting, which, like I said, kind of comes on the doors and in the door pockets and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got the digital scent, which will let the car smell like something pleasant or maybe like a 2005 era Abercrombie, depending on what you think of the different smells. And it shows you how much is remaining there. You can change how strong it is. Like I said, you've got more seat adjustments in here. Did I tap that? Let's try that again. You've got more seat adjustments in here for the driver and passenger. 3 different ways for doing lumbar, and then you've got your side bolsters and your hip bolsters, and the seats are massaging, which is quite nice. So that is all fine and good, and then you can get into settings, that sort of thing. Now, I mentioned the car has Google Maps built in and Android Automotive. It does also have Apple CarPlay. Now, this Google Map that is showing right now is from my phone. That Google Map that's showing up here is from the car. You cannot send something from Apple CarPlay to the top screen. It will not do it. So if you want to enter in a destination, you have to do it from the car's built-in interface, which looks surprisingly like Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And I can type in something here and figure out where I want to go. So this is all fine and good. It's plenty snappy, and you know, that is not anything crazy at all. You just have to consider the fact that the car will eventually require a subscription fee to make all this work because it is connected to the internet. But this is all fine and good. It does let you stream your music straight from Apple CarPlay, which is lovely, and the steering wheel controls work, of course. And speaking of, let's talk about them, because the Squircle wheel just has 2 little D-pads, and they're not labeled. You see this one's got a little cruise control icon, but that's it. Now, Lexus does this with the RX. I mentioned the RX was something that I think is a competitor. Let's see if I can get the camera. Look up here at this screen. When I just lightly push my finger, rest it on one of the buttons, you see it's got on the right side, it's showing me what it's going to do for volume, next track. If I hit the center, it'll play or pause. If I do it on the left side, it will do the same thing, but for cruise control and my different driving assistance things. The rest of these fill in and become usable once you are using Blue Cruise, which is Lincoln's version of the hands-free cruise control driver assistance suite. So it uses pre-mapped roads, it's all highway based, and it makes sure that your eyes are looking straight ahead, and then it's hands-free driving. More about that again when we start driving this thing. So does this all work? Yes. Do I wish it just had labeled buttons? Also yes. I think it's a little silly. I appreciate the subtlety and the minimalism, but to me that's a little bit a step too far. Now, they do thankfully have other buttons. If we look further down at the center console here, you can see I've got my phone and a wireless charger right here. This is your shifter, these kind of piano keys that have become a Lincoln staple for quite some time now. You've got buttons for your auto brake hold, your hazards, and your parking assistance. And then your max defrost, which is also controlled in the screen, but nice to have it right here. Your camera views and your drive modes. And then this big knob is going to be for your volume. This all feels really nice, very well done. I do appreciate it. The climate control, aside from that max defrost, is going to be all down here at the bottom of the screen. And if you push this little icon in the center, you've got full control beyond what persists down at the bottom. Now, one interesting thing you might notice with the air vents, they are all along this strip here. There's no controls for those. You cannot just grab them and move them. You have to go into this menu, and then you can tap and drag, and it shows you kind of where you can drag around. Now, I don't like this at first because I think it's a little silly. It makes things harder than they need to be. However, if anyone remembers the Mazdas of the early 90s that had the swing vents, there's a cool feature here. So if you are in the climate menu, You've got vents for you, vents for your passenger. You can hit this and you can say, I want them on my body, off my body, or motion. I can do it over here too. And now they start going up and down. It's not like Mazda's swing, which was left to right, but this is a cool feature and I love it. So that is really, really kind of fun. And when you ignore it for a bit, it goes back to your main screen. Only other thing here is your general apps that you have for the car, and this does have access to the Play Store, so you can download other apps directly to it if you really want. Obviously doing music from CarPlay or Android Auto works just fine as well. And then otherwise, if we look in the rest of the car, you've got a giant panoramic sunroof, which is lovely. You've got a large back seat, which is lovely again, and a fairly large cargo area back there. But I want to talk about driving because this, like I said, is not really a driver's car, but it is an enthusiast car if you are enthused about hybrids and good fuel economy and kind of wafting everywhere you go. Okay, so while we're at the stoplight here, let's first talk about drive modes because there is a button and I don't think anyone's going to use any of them most of the time. You've got normal, you've got conserve, which is eco first, you have excite, which is your sport mode, slippery for bad weather, I guess, and deep conditions if you want to talk to your passengers about your feelings. But I think the car is going to be used mostly in normal mode, and that's what I'm driving it in. This is the hybrid, of course, and this is not a car that encourages you to drive quickly at all. It just kind of shuffles power around, it does its thing, and it's just a delight when it does it. I really have no idea when the electric motor is working, when the gas motor is working, just kind of all beeps and boops along. And I love the fact that there's no tachometer in this display. You just have a big speedometer, and in this case, there's a couple different themes. With this theme, I've got this little kind of bright bar that moves based on my road speed, but there's nothing that indicates any of this. And just away from a stoplight, it's just pleasant. And even if I put my foot down, it's pretty quiet. And there's just no... It doesn't encourage you to drive quickly, but also it does because you have no idea how fast you're going because it's so quiet in here. It's serene, you don't really hear the drivetrain, and 50 feels the same as 80, which is a great thing unless you're prone to speeding tickets. But the drivetrain is really nice in this. I do think having the hybrid is what makes this car so good, and it is so good. And then as far as how this drives otherwise, beyond the acceleration, serene is the best word. It has that adaptive suspension, which will get stiffer in the Excite sport mode, but I don't care about that. It's nice as it is right here. Now, I mentioned those 22-inch wheels because the suspension on this is a little, well, I shouldn't say the suspension, the ride quality on this is interesting to me because it feels almost a little under-damped and then a little crashy. And I don't think that's actually the case. I think the damping is probably fine, but these wheels being 22s, you've got an itty-bitty tire, you've got almost no sidewall going on, which is great for looks, but there's no tire to help soak up the bumps in the road. And when you do get this over some bumps, whether it's potholes or even like little expansion joints here, it just feels a touch off. And I think if you simply got one with smaller wheels that have more tire to them, I think it would be a far better pairing, and that would be my preference. You can get this with 20s and 21s as well, and I'm honestly kind of a fan of a smaller wheel and a bigger tire just in general. I think it tends to work so much better. Now, the other thing that a lot of people have complained about with these Nautilus is the braking feel, and they say that the brakes are a touch grabby when you first go for the pedal. I think that is the case in some instances, although if you're wafting, it's not so bad. I think the pedal feels pretty good, pretty well calibrated, but if you do dig into the pedal a touch more, I can see where people would say, oh yeah, it's got a little too much bite, and it's not, you know, it's not as progressive as you would hope as you move through the pedal travel. So it's something that an owner, I think, would get used to. It's not really bad, but it's certainly different. And then the steering is appropriately weighted. I would say it's actually got a little bit of communication to it. It's got more feel than I think a wafty Lincoln would have, but even at higher speeds, it doesn't lighten up too much. It feels nice. The whole car is nice and buttoned down, but it still fulfills Lincoln's mission, which is to be the opposite of sporty. It's the complete antithesis of something like what Cadillac's done, where they want to be the sporty luxury brand to compete with other sporty things, you know, like BMW and Audi and whatnot. And I just appreciate the fact that Lincoln kind of doesn't care, and they're doing this. And I mention that because I think this competes very strongly against the Lexus RX, which is the other one, unless you go for that 500H, which is not worth buying. The 350H, for example, is also just a pleasant car. But this has much more personality, it has much more style. I would even say it drives in a more refined way, and I think it feels more premium with the interior based on how it's all laid out and the materials that it's got going on in here. It's a very nice car. So really, really happy with it. And then this big screen, you know, this is a lot to process. And like I said, the stuff on the right side, I don't know if I'm really feeling it, but it's also not that big of a distraction either. It's fine. But I do think I like this. I think. Because you don't need a heads-up display. You've got a low dashboard down here, and then you've got this screen that is ultimately not very tall. It's, I'd say 6 inches, but I'm a bad estimator. It's a nice size, and you've still got a low, you know, good amount of visibility. Otherwise, it's out of your way, and you can see right out the front. You've got good visibility. The door sills are a touch high, but either way, the visibility out the front of this car is actually quite good. Now, out the back, big pillars, as you kind of expect from a lot of crossovers, and I don't love that, but you can deal. And otherwise, you know, it's light and airy in here. I would pick an interior color that wasn't black because I think it would make this feel far more warm and even more luxurious. I think the black is a touch dour, but it's fine. It's just not me. But yeah, I'm really into this, more than I thought I would be. And it's not a car that encourages you to drive quickly. It's not a car that wants to be driven quickly. It is good on gas. I had one of our Instagram followers comment that they have owned a black label since they came out. They got on the waiting list before they were even being built, and they're averaging like 30 miles a gallon in mixed driving. I'm averaging less because I've been testing everything and I've got a heavy foot. But, oh, okay, Chevy, just go. It's fine. But yeah, it's just so serene, and I like that. So this is, I see what the appeal is here. It's not a car for me because I like cars that are more sport focused, but there's also a big appeal in, you know, whatever you do for work or day-to-day life. There is a huge appeal in getting into something like this that just kind of locks you out from the rest of the world and just lets you kind of be in your little bubble that smells nice and has wonderful seats that take 30 minutes to get adjusted, and then you save them to memory and it's all fine. These seats are great, but they take a while to get sorted out. But you have this whole just Serenity Now sort of concept, and it works, and it's nice. It's so nice. I'm driving this right before New Year's Eve. You know, that's kind of a time of year where I think everyone, well, a lot of people, look at the last year and they look at what's coming up, and it is now time for a reset. And we want to just kind of have a little come down from the year and figure out what we're doing next. And this is a lovely car for something like that. It just is, I'd buy this over the RX. Handily. It is a far better car. And yeah, I'm into it. There's a couple things I don't love. I wish there was a way you could send your maps to the car from CarPlay, which you might be able to do through like a Lincoln app or Google Maps, the app itself. But that would go a long way in, I got a text with this address or this restaurant, I want to send it to the car. Fine. I don't have it set up that way because I'm not logged into the car because it's not my car. But you know, other than that, like that, I wish the screens could show you different information, although I don't really know what I would care to see. It's just a delight. So kudos to Lincoln. This thing's great. And I'd previously said the Aviator was my favorite car that they sold because I thought it fulfilled its mission so well. And I think it still does. But I think this also fulfills its mission very well. And Lincoln, I have said for a long time, they picked their thesis statement a long time ago at this point, and they have stuck to it, and it's just, they're doing it, and it's good. and this is a really nice evolution of what they've been up to. So kudos to Lincoln. I like the car. I understand why people have picked it as their of the years, and they should be really pleased. And if you're looking at, you know, other things in this category, I do think you owe it to yourself to give one of these a drive, because there is indeed a lot to like. So those are my thoughts on the 2024 Lincoln Nautilus. Thank you, as always, for coming along for the ride. Please be sure to like us on all of our socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and now Blue Sky, if you're over there yet. And head over to outmotorsports.com if you'd like to join a community of fellow LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors. We've got events coming up for 2025, both online and in person. We've got stuff on the track, stuff on the street. It's going to be a lovely time, and we can't wait to be your new best friends. So until next time, stay safe, be well. See you again soon.